Yeah, the ProLife block, that block, the good thing about it and the unique thing about it is that it will be a cross-party group. It's not a Liberal faction as Bob, or a Labor faction or anything like that. It's a cross-party block of votes that is united across the Parliament, across both houses by a common cause.
Good evening and welcome to another ACL update. My name's Alister. I'm one of the national directors here at the Australian Christian Lobby, and as ever I'm with Wendy Francis, the National Director for Politics. Now, we had in mind to bring you this week Senator Claire Chandler talking about women in sport. Now, we definitely plan to do that, but we've held that off to next week. This week is really, really important because this coming Saturday is the South Australian state election. It's a really important moment. And on the basis that it is a really important moment, you're actually in Adelaide right now, Wendy.
I am. I was down here for the final forum that Amanda and Christopher Brohill were running last night, and it was a really brilliant event. So they put out 200 seats and there weren't very many spare. So I would say there would have been at least 180, 190 people there, really motivated for this election. This is a really important election in our nation. Yeah.
Now, Wendy, let's talk about the South Australian election. We're actually going to devote this period of time to the election. Could you give us a sense of what the focus of this campaign is going to be for the ACL?
So right from the start, the focus of the election for ACL was all about pro-life candidates. And so we wanted to highlight the MPs who voted for abortion to birth. We wanted to highlight the MPs on both sides of the major parties, Liberal and Labor parties, on who voted against abortion to birth. But we also wanted to highlight the number of minor parties who have sprung up, many of whom, and we're going to talk to two of them today, one of the main reasons that they are wanting to even run is because of some of these righteousness issues. And so we wanted to highlight them as well. The campaign has been really successful. Surprisingly so for me in a way, because the mainstream media have been reporting on this pro-life election. The ABC had a great article, leading article about this election and the pro-life issues that have been raised. And so we're really hopeful and prayerful that there will be an amazing result on the weekend. But if nothing else, the conversation around life has been very worthwhile and a really good platform for other elections, I would say. But it's been hundreds of volunteers have taken place, and I believe very effectively.
Yeah, so we will talk about this at the end of this, but it will probably be a blueprint for the federal election work that we do as well. But hear this, folks, and we've said it now more than once. We are moving away in our focus from talking about parties, and we're talking about individual candidates. We're looking for people, for individuals of integrity. Sure, the party message is important. We're not denying that. But we're saying turn your attention away from parties, turn your attention to your individual electorate, to who's on that ballot and what they stand for. So we've got two pro-life candidates with us tonight, which is wonderful, Wendy, in the midst of a very busy week for them. Firstly, welcome to you, Tom Kenyon from Family First, and Bob Day from Australian Family Party. Great to have you both with us, and we do appreciate your time tonight, gentlemen. Now, you've both been in Parliament before, so the question really is from your perspective, is this election different from previous elections? Perhaps, Bob, you can go first, and then Tom will get a comment from you as well.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, certainly it is different. For two reasons. First, that our campaign has centred around one theme. Previous elections, one covers a whole gamut of policies for a political party, and economics, social issues, local issues, and so on. But this campaign actually started and motivated me to get back into politics again, because I couldn't sit back and watch what was happening to my state, the way legislation was being introduced against life matters, abortion and euthanasia in particular. So this campaign has focused on that theme, being a pro-life theme, and we've concentrated very much on that, and also targeted the members of Parliament who were against life, who voted against amendments that tried to defend life. The second difference that I've noticed on this campaign is the way a number of pro-life minor parties have coordinated and had worked together on a central strategy. I don't remember seeing that happen before, and targeting a number of seats. So it's been a very strategic, tactical and operational exercise to send a real message that we're really serious about these pro-life matters. So yeah, they're the two main differences that I've seen in this campaign, and I've been involved in a number of campaigns over many years.
And great to see you back in the saddle, Bob.
Oh, thank you.
Tom.
Yeah, only to just reiterate what Bob has said, that the fact that it's an issue for the first time in my life, really, that abortion has become a political issue during a campaign, which is great to see. The willingness of the minor pro-life parties in unison. So, it's not just a couple of guys from the Labor Party who have reformed Family First, but it's also Bob Day, formerly of the Liberal Party. It's One Nation, not known friends of the Labor Party. And all three have the same preference and strategy, and that is to direct away from sitting members based purely on their voting record, no other consideration, and not in exchange for preference deals in the upper house or anything like that. It's no principle on this issue is so important that we're not going to do a deal with you. We are going to just preference based on your voting record, and I've never seen that before, and that's a good thing. And coming back to that theme that you've been talking about, candidates and people over parties, because parties are just not an indicator anymore of people's position on these really important issues. So, you've seen in Queensland and Victoria, we've seen abortion to birth introduced by a Labor government, and I don't think too many people would be surprised by that. But in New South Wales and South Australia, we've seen them introduced by a Liberal government, and I think a lot of people would be surprised by that. So,
yes, indeed,
it's not. Parties are no longer an indicator of people's voting. It's really just your voting record is the best determinant, and that's the fact that the pro-life side of politics has woken up to that and is starting to implement it is that's a really big thing. And even if it doesn't have a profound effect in this election, it will in subsequent elections, both here in South Australia and nationally. And so that's been great. And then the level of cooperation and unity of messaging in the pro-life groups, which can be a bit fractious at times, that level of unity. And I have to say, I've got to give a lot of credit to ACL and Christopher Brew in particular for leading that movement and leading the group and keeping it together in such a unified way for the last 3 years. I mean, this hasn't happened overnight. This happened during the debate on the bill, with the creation of the Walk for Life. Again, 11th of February, I think it is next year, second Saturday in February next year, so make sure you're there here in Adelaide. But that Walk for Life movement, and then now through into the election. So, it's been a remarkable achievement.
It really has. I just echo everything both of you have said, but I think that we also need our champions in Parliament. And I've had the great privilege of actually working with both of you on different campaigns, both out of Parliament and in Parliament. And I know how important it is in those campaigns that I've worked with both of you on. It has been a real privilege to have numbers. And so for me, watching this campaign and watching the way that it's been organised by, as you say, Christopher and Amanda, but many others as well, I've been really encouraged by the response from our supporters and the volunteers. I've never seen such a big army just go at it so hard and give up their precious time to do the letterbox dropping, to do the phone calls, to organise the direct mailing. I wondered then, have you felt that support? Like, it sort of feels to me as if there's this big army, but have you felt that? And if you have felt it, do you feel like that they are, cutting through? I guess I'm hopeful that the work that ACL have been doing has been an encouragement to you and almost been behind your back giving you wind behind your, under your wings, as they say. I'm hopeful of that. Is that how you have felt? Maybe Tom first this time.
Sure, absolutely it is. Absolutely. But it's sort of, the funny thing is it's been a bit stealth, just under the radar, and haven't really seen the fruits of it until the election proper was called. And then you saw the pamphlets going out, and not just one pamphlet. Where often, an interest group will say with, one particular interest will just put out one pamphlet in a campaign and think that's enough. But you've seen repeated pamphlets going out, like, it's a proper campaign. It's a decent marginal seat campaign. And, I'm a marginal seat campaigner. That's what I do. And I've really been impressed by it. The corflutes, the posters that have gone up, the phone calls, the texts, everything that's happening is generally, it's actually a really sophisticated campaign, and it's great to see. And then it has been encouraging to see that, and also, Love Adelaide doing some work in the background as well. And then just, last night, for instance, at the ACL, just the enthusiasm for the cause and for the direction and the unity of purpose that was in that room last night was very, very heartening. So every time I go to one of those things, I come back quite buoyed by it.
Mm.
Look, I reiterate that. What has been really noticeable has been the professionalism. And Wendy, you have been a candidate yourself in an election, and a brilliant candidate at that. You were the candidate from Central Casting when you ran in 2010 for the Senate. And it's noticeable now that you have been involved in this. Normally, political parties, we are approached by a number of lobby groups and organisations who are what we sometimes uncharitably refer to as enthusiastic amateurs, that they don't really understand political campaigning. They're somewhat naive sometimes, and it's sometimes really difficult trying to get them to understand the realities and the practicalities of just what political campaigns are about, and trying to marshal them and try to keep them on board without disappointing them. They have their single issue that's in their mind. Why can't you run with this on every media, every waking moment? And they don't understand the nuances that go into a campaign. This one's different. Wendy, your experience is coming through, and it's a great credit to ACL that you have been involved in this one. It's been really helpful for the professional political parties who actually have to run the campaigns on the ground and get people elected and know how to do preferencing and so on. So that has been an absolute joy. It's been a delight working with ACL and some of the other organisations. So thank you. Thank you,
Bob.
Wendy.
Thank you, Bob. Let's continue. The religious discrimination bill has been all over the headlines federally of late, and we all know that it failed. It was, effectively white-anted by moderate Liberals and the Labor Party at the 11th hour. 11th hour in the 55th minute. South Australia doesn't have religious freedom laws. So, gentlemen, this is just an opportunity. If elected, would you support, in as much as it's achievable in a state situation like South Australia, religious freedom laws? Maybe again, back to you, Bob.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think after this campaign, and if we achieve what we expect to achieve in this campaign, we will have a mandate. We will have a pro-life mandate to reintroduce those amendments that were defeated by the last Parliament. And we'll say to the new MPs that if you block these amendments, like the last Parliament did, then we'll do to you what we did to the MPs who are no longer here. So we will definitely use that M word, the mandate. We really will believe that we'll have a very, very solid base on which to then push those amendments and give the sitting MPs, the new MPs in particular, and give them a justification so that they can say to their supporters that, look, well, they do have a mandate. The reason I'm sitting here in the Parliament now and running my shopping list of other factors that I've campaigned on, and they will kind of shift the focus a little bit and say, well, look, Yes, I was supportive of abortion in the past, or yes, I was supportive of euthanasia, but I also campaigned on social housing, and I campaigned on Indigenous rights and climate change and so on. So we'll give them a reason. So we don't back them into a corner. We'll give them a reason to support us because of the mandate we believe that we will have.
And I guess I would also want to push you a little bit on there, Bob, and Tom as well. Christian schooling. A lot of Christian parents are concerned, and education is obviously a state issue as much as it's federal, but just the assurance that Christian schools can continue to operate with a Christian ethos and so forth. Have you considered that in terms of your platform?
Most definitely. All my children all went to Christian schools. It's absolutely essential that parents can expect that the school that they send their children to will confirm and endorse the central tenets of their faith and their belief. Faith-based schools should absolutely be able to employ teachers who subscribe to their values and the tenets of their faith, and that will definitely be high on the agenda on this religious discrimination issues.
Because of course,
sure.
The schooling has been a big part of that religious discrimination bill, and a
Yes.
big reason why we've fought so hard for the RDB. I know, Tom, that this is high on your list of Christmas wishes that you would do too. What's your answer to the sort of questions that we've just?
Well, absolutely, and so we've said at the start of the campaign that the first bill that I introduce, should I get elected, the first bill that I'll introduce will be a religious freedom bill, and within that bill there will be protections for Christian schools.
Can I just interrupt you and say I really like religious freedom instead of religious discrimination? I really like you using religious freedom. Bob used
Yes.
it as well,
Yes.
just because when you say religious discrimination, it's just such a negative, impact on people. So thank you. I interrupted you, but well done.
No, that's all right. Well, that bill that we would introduce would specifically give protection for faith-based schools, and we're seeing a few Muslim schools pop up now, and no doubt there'll be other faith in other states with bigger populations. There'll be faith-based schools of other faiths, but the right of those schools to hire people of similar faith or similar values. Background, so that that essentially what is the exemption from the Equal Opportunity Act is codified explicitly in a religious freedom bill, and the other one will be the right to teach, without compunction, that teach the faith that they profess. So and that free of any interference from crazy things like conversion therapy, attempts at conversion therapy bills or anything like that. So. That's very, very high on our agenda, closely followed by the very bill that Bob mentioned about to try and get those Spears amendments up around abortion to birth, and then tighten up the euthanasia legislation as well.
So Tom,
I beg your pardon, sorry, Wendy. I agree with Bob's assessment too about a likely increase in pragmatism amongst members after this election, if we are successful in what we do.
So I think that plays into what my next question was going to be. And Tom, you are representing a minor party.
Yeah.
So what can you realistically hope to achieve in the area of pro-life? So one of the big things that was really motivating for people is this whole area of pro-life, and I think it has shocked South Australians to understand that they really did pass abortion to birth, and some of the amendments even that seemed so reasonable weren't passed. So this campaign has been about life. And can I just say to our listeners while I'm prefacing this too, we would not be hosting these two men today if we were not absolutely convinced of their pro-life credentials, because we have avoided giving platforms to people who have not had the pro-life credentials. So there are also other candidates not represented here today that we wholeheartedly support. So please make sure that you go to savotes.org.au after this, particularly if you live in South Australia, obviously, and just check out the profiles and the information there. But I'll go back to you, Tom. So you're a minor party. What can you hope to achieve in the area of the pro-life legislation after the weekend if you're elected?
So, assuming that I get elected, it's the same. I think if Bob gets elected as well, the upper house in South Australia, which over the last few years has been very regressive in its policies, is likely to become a lot more pro-life. There'll be close to 10 really solid votes out of the 22, which means you're only one off, getting a majority, given that there has to be a president. So 11 votes is the key number of votes. And we'd be very close to that 11. We'll have 10 solid, and there'll be a few floaters around there that we might be able to drag in on these things. So, that big problem in recent years has been the upper house. The nature of the upper house is going to change in this election, regardless of the outcome in many ways. And then the lower house, the key here is, can we have an effect in marginal seats? Because if we can, then when we're having these negotiations, like when Bob or I, as minor party members of the parliament, are having these conversations with lower house members, we're suddenly carrying a big stick, because we're suddenly wielding, they know that we can move votes around in marginal seats, and they will start to pay attention to that, and suddenly the lower house will become a lot more friendly. The other thing that I think the challenge for us as a movement is to learn how to move votes in safe seats. And that's completely different campaigning in safe Liberal seats versus safe Labor seats. But for me, the challenge is to move votes in safe Labor seats and also learning how to... I think in some ways it's a bit easier in safe Liberal seats because you run into a good local independent can garner a lot of support. But in safe Labor seats, we need to find a way to move votes around so they get a little bit fearful about their own seats. And when in that environment, you can achieve a lot. And as Bob said, and he's absolutely right, that if we stop worrying too much about second order issues, they're not. It's not that they're not important. It's just they're not as important as life issues. And so if we say to them, okay, we will accept the gains in the most important areas in our view, i.e. the life issues, then we're not going to try and stand too much in your way on these other ones. We're not here to thwart you on everything. It's just that this is critical for us.
Bob?
Yeah, look, from little things, big things grow. If we can get elected on this pro-life mandate, then we've got something to work with. We'll start with amendments and with the religious freedom position and build up from there. Then we'll start to really have some cut through as we, as our mandate then takes effect. There's a sitting MP in South Australia who stood up and said, look, I know my electorate doesn't want me to vote for this abortion, but I'm going to anyway. Now, so there's a general consensus in the community. They're very uncomfortable with things like abortion to birth and selling off of body parts and not allowing prayer, silent prayer near an abortion clinic. These sorts of things just go against the grain of, as John Howard used to say, it's a conservative world out there. And what people believe, deep down, we think we're on the right side of those sorts of things. So we'll start off slowly. We'll have a short-term and a long-term view. In the short term, we'll be able to immediately, like Tom says, a religious freedom bill or reintroduce amendments. But then we'll also look long-term and aim to have, another member of Parliament at the next election, and then another one after that, and build up a really solid pro-life grouping and almost faction, a pro-life faction within the Parliament that is able to die in a ditch over these things. And people say, look, don't mess with that group, just let them have what they want. That's our position here. And we'll just see after Saturday where we stand on that.
And the unique thing
and if we get that pro-life if we get that pro-life block in Legislative Council, I'll be there with the video camera to watch Christopher Bro here dancing like a whirling dervish, and we'll get it on camera.
Well,
it'll be very exciting.
The
The
unique thing
pro-life
about
block,
that,
that's better than a pro-life faction. Yeah,
the
thanks.
pro-life
I'll
block,
use that.
that block, the good thing about it and the unique thing about it is that it will be a cross-party group. It's not a Liberal faction or a Labor faction or anything like that. It's a cross-party block of votes that is united across the Parliament, across both houses by a common cause.
I think one of the things that excites me about you two gentlemen too is that you've already been there. You know the system. You wouldn't start from a starting, just a stop-start. You'd actually start already with the relationships. You already know the system. You've been in there. You know it. So that excites me too, because whilst Bob, you say you'd start slowly and you'd build up. You both have an advantage over other people in that you already know the system.
We've played the game before. Yeah, we know how it works. Yeah.
Gentlemen, in the interest of time, I think we've got about a minute left for each of you. There's a bit of repetition involved in this, but in the spirit of the last week before an election, a 1-minute stump speech. Why should people vote for Family First and Australian Family Party? Perhaps starting with you, Tom. 1 minute.
So the reason to vote for us is to give voice to all of those issues, to make sure there's a focus on all of those issues that we hold dear, the single most important issues, the foundation of our society, i.e. life. Nothing happens without life. And if we can't get that right, then there can be no justice for anything else. And so it's time the foundation has been eroded. It's time to rebuild that foundation, and Family First is a vehicle to do that.
30 seconds, even better. Bob.
Oh, look, my message to voters when you go in the polling booth, my message to everybody these days, when you go through highs and lows, is remember the verse, Colossians 3:15, let the peace of God rule in your heart, or I prefer the translation, let the peace of God be the umpire in your heart, so that when you're in the polling place and you're looking at that myriad of candidates and camp and parties, look at them, take a deep breath, close your eyes and ask yourself, do I have peace about this? Or you look at a candidate or you look at a party and like in Star Wars, you think, I've got a bad feeling about this Obi-Wan Kenobi. Something about this one I don't like. But you'll get to them and you get good at it after a while of making up your mind, making a decision in a very short space of time, not really being sure what to do, and then just ask yourself, do I have peace about this? And it works. I can attest and testify that it does work. There are some situations where you won't have peace about it, and certainly in political decision making, you can have peace in this tumultuous world in which we live.
Wendy, would you like to?
I really am grateful to you both. I'm grateful for the impact that you've had in my life personally. You've certainly both been inspirational to me on the sort of issues that you've fought for, and you just haven't given up. I think that's the one thing that I just am so grateful for. And so I am just praying that this weekend we will see an influx of men and women such as yourselves, and that it will be not just a great blessing to South Australia, but it will actually be a blessing to our entire nation.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you
Wendy.
so much. Yeah, so, and again, folks, South Australians particularly, we ask you to consider what you've heard today. We don't tell you who to vote for, we don't tell you who not to vote for, but it's the opportunity for you to hear directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak, to consider what you've heard and to make a wise decision. Wendy, the calendar this year has important elections in it. South Australia this Saturday, a federal election. I'm pitching the third weekend of May. We'll see. And of course, in November, Victoria. As our National Director for Politics, you've got a unique position to sort of assess, I guess, what's happening across the board. What lessons do you think you're picking up from South Australia, and what might we be applying to subsequent elections that we'll be looking at this year?
You know what? Over the past decade when I've been working in this space, I think this is the first time I've truly believed that there is a grassroots movement that is just, they have had enough and they are rising up. And they are ordinary mums and dads. And that's not an easy thing to do, because the ordinary mums and dads of Australia are looking after their families. They're cooking good meals at night. They are taking their kids to soccer practice and piano practice. And so they don't have a lot of spare time to go out and letterbox drop. But that is not what we've seen in this South Australian election. We have seen everyday mums and dads. We've seen increasingly a number of young people who are looking at the political system and they're saying, hang on a minute, there's something really wrong here. There's something stinking in what's happening. And so they are raising up like they never have before. And so for me, the South Australian election has just been an amazing precursor to what we're going to do federally. We are using it as a type of a blueprint, a practice run, so to speak. And so once again, we will be highlighting in the federal election candidates over parties. We will be highlighting members from both major parties who have voted according to truth, and we will be also highlighting those who have relentlessly opposed truth. And so our hope, our prayer, is that Australians will respond to this message of truth, and the truth will rise up to the surface, and that not only people of faith but all Australians will actually elect into our federal parliament in May men and women who will truly work for the flourishing of our nation. Because that's what God calls us to do, to seek the peace and the prosperity, the flourishing of our nation. And so we are grateful that we've had this opportunity in Adelaide to really test what we believed God was telling us to do. And Martin Iles has long had this dream of having a grassroots movement, and under his leadership and as he's become more and more of an influencer, that is exactly what's happened. So we now have the position where we've got hundreds of thousands of supporters and we have thousands of volunteers. And so we're looking forward to releasing now, it'll be towards the end of March that we will actually make public our federal campaign, and we will be all ready to go. So I'm excited about it, and as I say, I'm grateful to the Adelaide people for really showing the way.
Excellent. Look, that's a wrap for this week. We've sort of hit the 30-minute mark and then some. Wendy, thank you. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Folks, I would invite you to keep Wendy in your prayers. She's doing a fair bit of travelling. There's a lot on her plate. And just for wisdom, for godly wisdom, for Christopher Bro here and the team in South Australia for this weekend, for all the candidates. And we look forward to seeing you next week. I'm hoping next week it will be Wendy interviewing Claire Chandler, Senator Claire Chandler, as we said. That'll be a really exciting one to look forward to as well. So thank you, Wendy. Have a great week, everybody. See you now.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.